What is the most awkward moment you've ever had with a stranger? Story 1. Without thinking, I once tried to shake an amputee's hand. He stuck out his arm in a non-offended way to show that he was unable to shake my hand, and to diffuse the situation with only minimal amounts of awkwardness, I for some reason took this as a gesture to shake his handless arm. It was cut off at just above the elbow, so I had to really reach for it. This resulted in uneasy laughs and goodbyes. Stump fist bump? Like, what would have been the best thing to do when he sticks out his nub? Just apologize and leave? Or would making any contact at all just have been awkward? I honestly don't know how I would have handled this situation, but shaking the man's stub probably wasn't the best option. Story 2. I was riding my motorcycle a month ago when the light ahead of me turned red, so I slowed down and stopped behind the car that was also waiting at the red light. A guy in sweatpants jogs out between me and the car, and for some reason a TV remote flies out of his pocket and smashes like it was made of glass, all over the street. The sheer randomness of the guy having a TV remote in his pocket made me burst out laughing, and the guy was staring at the shards of the remote in the street like he didn't know how it got in his pocket. I'm laughing so hard that I ease off my clutch a bit and scare myself by moving forward an inch, causing me to stall my motorcycle. I can't stop laughing, and now my motorcycle engine isn't covering the sound. So the guy slowly looks up from the shattered remote and stares directly at me with this pained look on his face. He does this until I stop laughing, fire my bike back up, and drive around him and down the street. I bet his kid put the remote in his pocket and he was unaware. I have a toddler and I'm always finding random objects in my dresser, the hamper, the dog crate, under the couch, etc. Or maybe he was old, and as he was leaving the house, he turned the TV off and then put the remote in his pocket absent-mindedly. Heck, I'm 23 and sometimes I do stuff like that. I'm pretty sure I'd have noticed when I started running though. I sometimes put the remote in my pocket to keep it away from my kid, and I've totally ended up out and about with it still in my pocket. It happens, okay? Story 3. I have a minor social phobia. I was on the bus the other day and decided that I want to live my life, gosh darn it. I wanted to just start a conversation with a stranger, and I didn't know how. This woman and I were the only two people on the bus. I had this comic in my head and I figured the best thing I could do was just be honest. I looked at her and said, "Isn't it funny how we're so afraid to just begin a conversation with another human being?" She just stared at me. So to answer my own question, yes, it is funny. In a very tragic way. You tried, man. You tried. I'm stoked you tried. It's hard to open up with a stranger. I probably would have said, "I don't normally take the bus, but my Ferrari is in the shop. Oh god, I don't want to die alone. Do you like Game of Thrones?" And then OP never attempted to talk to a stranger ever again. Story 4. After taking a very stressful French exam during college, I went to the bathroom. All the stress from my life just kind of hit me at once and I started bawling. Several minutes into my nervous breakdown, some dude walks in to find me sitting in the corner near a sink just sobbing. He was so uncomfortable and I could tell. It was so ridiculous that I started laughing uncontrollably like a crazy person. The dude just turned around and left. Sort of like the moment when you think of something hilarious and begin to laugh out loud. Then you realize that no one knows what the heck you're laughing at and looks puzzled. That happened to me at a funeral. The level of awkwardness was unbearable. Story 5. I ended up going to a gas station and filled up my car, while this older guy was there doing the same. We both drove off and ended up at a Starbucks about 2 miles away. We then both ended up at the gym and ran a few treadmills apart. We both knew it was awkward. Were you both wearing the same shirt and pants? That would be the cherry on top of this awkward Sunday. No, but we made eye contact at each place. This happened to me with a neighbor I had a while back. We'd always end up at the same gas station or store together. The only thing that made it awkward is that we never spoke. We would just make eye contact and keep going. Story 6. I was at a wedding reception at a golf course and thought the entire patio was filled with wedding guests. Drunk and hungry, I also thought all the food at all the tables were wedding appetizers. Turns out there were regular country club members on the patio as well. Feeling social, I sat at one of the tables, started eating part of their shrimp cocktail appetizer and chatting them up. Unfortunately, they weren't part of the wedding and I was stealing their food. I probably sat there for 10 minutes until I came to the horrible realization of what was happening. How did you handle it after you realized? I said it was nice meeting them, got up and walked away. The taste of shame and cocktail sauce was still fresh on my tongue as I went into the bathroom, trying to gather my thoughts. About 15 seconds later, one of the guys at the table pulled up to the urinal next to me. I apologized profusely and offered to buy the table their next round of drinks. Apparently the whole table thought it was hysterical, and they invited me to sit with them and eat more shrimp. I felt too stupid to join them though. Story 7. When I was 12 or 13, my family was at some resort-style hotel that had a big indoor pool room. I met another boy there during the vacation and we'd hang out every day. One day, we casually walked into the indoor pool room and saw that there were tables covered in food everywhere, including a giant DIY ice cream sundae table. We both got real excited and ran over and started building epic sundaes. Halfway through building them, a woman came up to us and asked who we were. We were both like deer in the headlights as we slowly looked around the room and realized there was a party going on and everyone was staring at us. We didn't say anything. We just put down our ice cream and walked out of there as quickly as we could. Somehow, we had missed the giant signs all over the doors saying that a private party was going on. I later found out that my dad saw us go in and decided it would be funnier to watch what happened than to grab us before we made fools of ourselves. I also let my kids get themselves into hilarious situations for my entertainment. It's the payoff for all the dirty diapers, sleepless nights, and general cost of their existence. Dad 1, kids 0. Hey, nothing wrong with letting the kids get into a little harmless trouble for your own entertainment. It's a parental right. Story 8. I'm a guy. I was a freshman in college during the first week of classes. I was taking the campus bus as it went down this horribly bumpy hill. Having grown up in the suburbs, I wasn't used to standing on the bus. I lost my balance and fell into the lap of this guy over and over again, apologizing profusely all the while. I was the same for a while when taking the bus to college. One time, I slipped and roundhouse kicked a person. Not hard, but it was extremely embarrassing. If I was that guy, I'd give you the seat. You obviously hadn't found your land vehicle legs yet. This happened to me when I was visiting my girlfriend at the time in New York. I took the subway for the first time in New York City. Little did I know, I was not prepared for my legs to just give out when I was standing up in the subway as there were no seats available. I stumbled around like an idiot and eventually fell into the lap of a passenger who pushed me off with a "Get the F off me." I was really scared to take the subway again after that. Not just because of what happened with that guy that I fell into the lap of, but also I looked really stupid in front of my girlfriend at the time. Story 9. Well, mine was with a bunch of strangers, really. I was at the airport taking a red-eye overseas. I arrive at the international gate. It's deserted because it's 2 a.m., so I decided to take some sleeping pills, wait a few minutes, get drowsy, and figure I should take a pre-flight dump. Trot over to the bathrooms, which are completely empty at this hour, pick a stall, and start doing my business. 2 minutes later, I hear the click-clack of someone coming into the bathroom. All I can think is, wow, this guy has some loud shoes. 30 seconds later, the bathroom fills up. A flight had just deplaned, and this was the post-flight bathroom crowd. All I can think is, all these guys have really loud shoes, while still taking my dump. I peek under the stall, and suddenly my heart drops, like it has never freaking dropped in its life. You know what shoes are loud on tiles? Heels. That moment, I realized I, a grown man, am taking a giant smelly crap in the women's restroom. And then it hits me. I didn't see any urinals walking in, and this weird trash bin next to the toilet is filled with tampons. Freaking out, I do the only thing I can think of. I freeze. I pull my feet really close to the toilet and try to cover up my shoes so hopefully no one can tell a man is in there. I sit there for 15 minutes listening to women come in and out, using the bathroom 1 foot from me and chit-chatting on the other side of the door. I've never sweat so much in my life and been so terrified that I'm about to become an accidental sex offender. Finally, the waiting pays off. I can tell the bathroom is empty for a split second. No time to wipe. I pull my pants up and bolt out of there. As I run out at that moment, there's a guy clearly looking for the bathrooms right outside, but can't find them. He sees me running out and decides this must be the men's restroom and goes in. 5 seconds later, as I duck into the men's restroom to finish my business, I take a quick look over my shoulder and see him coming back out with a terrified, "What the heck?" look staring at me. He was thinking, "What the heck, man? I trusted you." I figured OP didn't notice because he was on sleeping pills, but then another man made the same mistake. Sounds like this airport needs to label their bathrooms more clearly. Story 10. I was once in one of those human-sized mazes. It was a pretty big one, and I was probably 25 minutes into it when I started having the urge to pee. I snuffed it off and just thought I would go when I got out. Fast forward another 20 minutes and I had to pee so incredibly bad. I was frantically power walking my way through this maze to find the exit. I was interrogating strangers on how to get out, but I was getting nowhere. I then found myself running through the maze, trampling over children as I quickly rounded blind corners, being a complete jerk. Finally, a part of the maze I hadn't been to yet. I thought, this must be it, I'm home free. freaking dead end. I froze. I stood there alone, scared and helpless. I had to urinate so badly I literally could not move a muscle. I tried to take a slow step forward and let loose like a gushing fire hydrant. I was so defeated during the moment that I didn't even think about pulling my pants down and just going all over the wall. Pee had won. It got what it wanted. There I was, having to accept all this like I had just lost my dog. After I soaked my pants, I slowly turned around and started walking out. I could hear some girls coming around the corner and knew I was in for it. Of course, it was some pretty girls that looked at me like I was a freak, and I just said to them, like it was no big deal, "Yep, peed my pants." They didn't say a word to me. It took me another 10 agonizing minutes to find my way out of the maze. Everyone was laughing, pointing, and making faces at me. It was horrible. I couldn't escape it, literally. Even when I made it out, one of the employees asked what happened, and I just gave him a cold stare. My face read, "What the heck do you think happened?" Dude, why didn't you just pee on the wall? I had to go so bad I literally could not move. Seriously. And when I started to pee, it was so relieving I just stood there and let that pee win. How old were you? Let's, leave that out. I don't know how old OP was, but I was in Little League when I peed my pants in public. I didn't realize that I was allowed to leave the field to go to the bathroom when I was in the outfield, so I was just standing there doing the pee dance for several innings, until finally it just shot out of me. Story 11. I ordered pizza online from Domino's and tracked it as it was being made. If you haven't ordered online before, it tells you by name who is preparing your pizza and stuff. Anyway, it told me Diego was on his way to deliver the pizza, so when the delivery man buzzed, I opened the door and said a very friendly, "Hello, Diego. Thanks for delivering my pizza." The man, who happened to be of Latin descent, just stood there and looked at me for a minute, then said, "My name is Luis." I could have tried to explain, but I was really hungry, so I paid the man and ate my pizza. I'm sure he had a good laugh about this with his coworkers when he got back to the store. It's a harmless mistake. Story 12. I was waiting in line for a ride at Cedar Point, and I swung my arms down to my sides, except there was a girl with a miniskirt on the other side of the rail, and my hand just smacked her right on the butt. I was beet red, apologized, and then just left the line. Something similar happened to me. I was at the grocery store in a crowded aisle. I attempted to squeeze between these two people, while at the same time, I bring my hand up to my face to push up my glasses. I ended up slapping this very pretty blonde woman right on the butt. I mumbled an apology and kept going. I felt really bad because she jumped a little when she felt it, and I'm sure that I ruined her day. Story 13. I was getting onto an international flight, and the flight attendant asked for my passport. I didn't hear him though, and I just saw him extending his hand out towards me, so I reached out and shook his hand. It was at that moment when I realized what he said to me. He just laughed and tried to save us both from a really awkward moment by saying, "Nice to meet you. Do you have your passport?" I apologized and opened up my bag to look for my passport. I looked behind me and a line of people had started to form, so I tried to hurry. I had a newspaper in my hand, so I tucked it under my arm. As I started opening up all my pockets in my backpack trying to find my passport, I dropped my newspaper. I went to pick up the newspaper, and as I bent over, the contents of my backpack fell onto the floor. I felt so awkward that I was apologizing to other people for subjecting them to my awkwardness. I found my passport, showed the flight attendant, and proceeded to gather up my things. At the end of the flight attendant shook my hand, so I think we're cool. I feel like we've all experienced something like this at one point or another. Just reading this post had me sweating nervously from secondhand awkwardness. Story 14. I work in a restaurant, and I was going to greet a customer walking in. Right before he came in, my friend Diane was joking around with me, and as he walked in, I said very loudly, "I love you," in the same tone that you would say, "How are you?" It got dead silent, and he looked at me and just said, "I'm going to sit at the bar." He proceeded to mean mug me all night. He was lucky to have my love, if only for a moment. This is probably one of my favorites. I work in a restaurant too, and there have been plenty of awkward moments like this one. I've greeted tables with, "Hello ladies," only to realize it was a woman and a really feminine looking man. Also, my friend and I meow at and catcall each other throughout the entire restaurant, and many of the other servers have caught on and started doing it. We're also required to yell "corner" when we're coming around corners to avoid collisions. I had a table ask me why we said corner, so I explained. Then they asked why we were meowing. Awkward. Story 15. When I was 13, I was at the local convenience store with friends in the middle of winter. We all decided to get some frothy cappuccinos to warm our spirits. I decided on the French vanilla, while my other friend went for an English toffee. We paid while our other friends were pursuing other items and started walking towards the door, with me walking in front. As I approached the door, I took the cap off of my frothy beverage, smelled it, and turned back to my friend with my eyes closed while giving an over-the-top and obnoxious mmm sound. When I opened my eyes, I realized it wasn't my friend, but an extremely unimpressed middle-aged woman with glasses. We stared at each other for at least 5 seconds, me rooted to the spot in shock and her judging me. She then moved past me and left. It turns out my friend doubled back to go talk to the other friends perusing other things, and the middle-aged woman had purchased her things right after mine. My friends saw it all and were dying of laughter. Oh my god, I love and hate this situation. I start talking to our friend and turn around to realize it's actually someone else who was confused as heck. Funniest stuff. Story 16. I was at a Walmart picking up a few things back when I was in high school, and I ran into a girl I had just started dating a week prior. I was actually about to go over her house for the first time. She ran up behind me and did a kind of groping hug on me, which surprised me at the time because I wasn't expecting it. She told me she was just about to be leaving after grabbing a few last-minute things, so I told her I would see her at her house. Well, I was walking around the store and I saw her again in the soda aisle in the back. I figured, hey, I'll do what she did to me. I went up behind her, gave her a hug, and groped her all in one motion. It wasn't her. It was her mom. So sorry, I was actually trying to fondle your daughter. My apologies. It was a rather bad experience. The aftermath of me realizing, letting go, and my girlfriend walking up to introduce me was even worse. This is painfully awkward. I bet the relationship didn't last long. Story 17. I got onto an empty elevator in my apartment building and mashed the button to go up to my floor. Suddenly, a hand darts in the door and another guy hops on. He mashes a button 8 floors up above mine, and up we go. A few floors up, he turns to me and says, "Well, this is awkward." I check myself over. Have I left my fly down? Is there a stain I don't know about? So I reply, "Excuse me?" As he reaches forward to mash a button on an approaching floor, he says, "You know, 2 gingers on 1 elevator can't be good luck. I'm getting off." And off he went onto the next floor. I bumped into him a few more times while I was living in that building. Dang, what an awkward ginger. Story 18. This is kind of a sad story, but was very awkward for me. I was 15 and the financial crisis just happened. My mom is an accountant and she was contracted to a new job like every 6 months as a temp. At one of her previous jobs, this elderly Asian woman got fired and filed a lawsuit against the company for sexism or something. She wanted my mom's support, so she came to our house, but I was the only one home. I invited her in and told her my mom would be back soon and that she could wait if she wanted. I proceeded to go back to my room, and she followed me there. So she sat on my bed and I sat at my computer wanting to play some Counter-Strike. She suddenly starts talking about why she's there and about her daughter who is in med school, and then she starts crying. Me being 15, I had no idea what the heck to do, so she just cried while I stared at her for a long time. My mom never showed, so she left while tears ran down her cheeks. The saddest part is, I did not play Counter-Strike that day. This is absolutely tragic. Just incredibly heartbreaking. I mean, I can't imagine being burdened in such a horrible way. Nothing gets in between me and Counter-Strike. Story 19. I spent about 5 minutes in conversation with a woman at the bus stop yesterday. She first asked me where I was from. I told her, around here, but that didn't cut it. She repeated her question and I repeated my answer. With a heavy sigh, she asked, "No, what country were you born in?" I replied, "This one." This appeared to vex her enormously. She went on to ask where my parents were born, and dissatisfied with the answer I gave, they were both born in Britain, she asked where my grandparents were born. She clearly suspected me of being a total liar when I answered that all of my grandparents were born in Britain. She then told me that someone in my family must be Turkish, and went on and on about it for what felt like an eternity. I'm still quite confused and have been asking friends if I look Turkish. Not one of them has said that I do. Ah yes, I've had several variations of this conversation, usually coming from dudes with obvious Asian fetish who are eager to find out which Asian ethnicity I was, so they could tell me all they knew about my culture. What a shame for them that I'm technically second generation and my father was born in the USA. I actually had an argument with this dude once who was convinced I wasn't what I said I was and that I had to be mixed because his brother's Asian girlfriend and I didn't look alike. On a semi-related note, I once had an argument with someone who who said I was lying about being half French because I don't have an accent. I've never been outside the US and both my parents were born here. I've had very similar conversations with people who always ask, "Where are you from?" when they really mean, "What's your ethnic background?" It's always awkward. Story 20. I was peeing in a public bathroom, in one of those bathrooms that are meant for one person at a time and are unisex, so they have a toilet on one side and a urinal on the other. No dividing walls. I was peeing in the urinal and a man walked in. I was focusing on my stream, and me being super awkward, I didn't look up. I can tell he was hesitating, but I guess he decided to be brave and pee into the toilet with his back to mine. Not really how it works, but whatever. I took a while, so we were peeing back to back for quite some time. Then finally I finished. Time to wash my hands. I zipped up and turned around and saw that the dude was sitting down. He was a big guy too. Story 21. When I was a kid, I liked to extend my arm fully out the car window to feel the wind. On one occasion, I was riding with my dad, who lived in the city, and we were driving down a particularly narrow street with 2 lanes. As usual, I had my arm hanging out the window, and I ended up slapping an older black gentleman right in the face as we drove by each other. He immediately started shouting at me, and I began rolling up the window, non-automatic window, as quickly as my little hands would roll. That happened to my friend a few weeks ago, except he hit a pole, and his arm snapped. Story 22. I was overwhelmed with happiness one day because my best friend and I had finally begun dating after 2 years of liking each other after me being in an awful relationship. I was at the reception desk, I am the receptionist at an office, and my brain was a mushy mess. The new courier came by to give us mail and grab whatever mail was supposed to go out. I took the mail he handed me and had the mail to give back to him on my desk. He asked, "Could I see those?" I, like an idiot for some reason, thought he meant my rings, and I showed him my hand. He looked at me with a confused expression and said, very nicely, "Oh, those are nice. Can I have the mail?" I died. Anyone else's mind go directly to Jim and Pam from The Office? Immediately, in fact, I skipped to the end of the story to see if it was an Office joke. I immediately thought of The Office too. I'm honestly a little disappointed OP wasn't just trolling by writing the description of a scene from The Office. Story 23. I struck up a conversation with a guy sitting next to me on a flight full of people going to Bonnaroo. I asked him what he did for a living, and I could have sworn he said voyeur. Under the consideration that Bonnaroo attracts an off-center and eclectic crowd, I figured this was feasible. Thus, I responded, "So you watch people do it for a living?" He retorted, "No, I'm a lawyer." We didn't talk for the rest of the flight. I'm using this the next time I don't want to talk to people on a plane. Story 24. I had a job as a server a few years ago. I had a married couple seated in my section one evening that seemed normal when I first approached them, but as the night continued, their conversation grew more heated. I was eavesdropping on the conversation when I visited the table, and they were clearly in the middle of some serious domesticuffs. In the end, the man asked for a divorce and stormed out as I was approaching the table with their appetizers. I kind of just stood there like an idiot while she sobbed in front of me asking for the bill. At least it was only awkward, and you didn't end up an accidental jerk. Story 25. I was at a Friendly's restaurant with my mom for lunch and ice cream. We sat down in a booth on the opposite side of a grandfather and a little boy. While waiting for our food, the grandfather kept scolding the kid for drinking the water in his glass. My mom and I didn't really know why, and it made things awkward for us to the point we stopped talking. The kid kept drinking his water, then eventually leaned into the aisle, opened his mouth, and with zero sound or expression on his face, began to vomit a constant stream of light brown liquid. His grandfather just threw his hands in the air, looked right at my mom and I, and said, "I warned him. Why do they never listen?" We were just stunned and couldn't say anything. Our server came around the corner probably 15 seconds later, saw the mess on the floor, leaned down to start cleaning it up with her bare hands and the napkins in her apron. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, did he spill something?" To which the kid replied by puking on her back and all over her hair. The horror of realizing what she put her hands in and also being puked on showed in her face. My mom and I left. I'm guessing there was more than water in that glass. I chose not to mention the kid was too full and kept complaining he was feeling sick. It was the most watered down puke I have ever seen. Why couldn't the grandpa have just moved the water out of the kid's reach? Kids will do as much as we let them, and they don't listen very well. This was definitely the grandpa's fault. Story 26. I went to a thing where my big sister ended up hanging out with a bunch of her friends. At one point, I went to go and hang out with them, and one of the girls told a joke. Everyone laughed, but one girl was laughing really loud and just laboring about it. I asked loudly, does she need to go to the hospital or something? At which point all the girls turned and looked at me with the most absolute set of death eyes I have ever had trained on me. Turns out that girl had just gotten in a horrible car accident and had survived but was completely paralyzed. They had pulled her out of her wheelchair to make her feel normal. All the girls considered her so brave. I doubt any of those girls even remembers that moment, but it was horrifying to me. That was just a case of accidental insensitivity. It happens. Story 27. I was moonwalking in public to impress some peeps, and I ended up moonwalking into an old lady and knocking her over. She was flustered but fine. I didn't know what to say. Such is life in pop culture America. Story 28. I was sitting opposite my friend who was talking to someone else at a party. I'm only at the other side of the table, but because of the music, I couldn't really hear them without leaning over. So while keeping an interested look on my face, so they believe I'm actually listening, I start daydreaming and end up laughing at something in my head. The girl talking to my friend just turns to me and asks if I know what they're talking about. Turns out they were talking about how her dad had just left home and started dating someone the same age as her sister. The laugh was timed to perfection to provide maximum awkwardness. Story 29. One time I was going to see a movie with my friend. She was downstairs in her mom's silver car waiting for me. I had no idea which car was theirs, so I just assumed it was the first silver car I saw, and entered through the front door. I sat down for about 3 seconds, closed the door, and put on my seatbelt. Then I looked to my left and found myself looking at a 40-year-old man. I stared at him for about 5 seconds, said hi, and exited. Story 30. Last week, I was eating at a restaurant, and a guy at the table next to me was eating French fries with chopsticks. I live in New Mexico, so this was fascinating. I decided it was necessary to take a picture and proceeded to do so, realizing too late that the flash was on. He looked at me and said, "Did you just take my picture?" I replied, "Yes. What else are you supposed to say?" It was only made worse by the fact that we were both at tables full of people. I cringed. Holy crap, I've done something similar, not taking photos of someone else, but going through settings on my phone and hitting the snap button by accident. The telltale snick, and a bus full of people wondering if they just got hidden cameraed. The flash ratted him out. Good. Taking pictures of people without their permission is creepy. Story 31. In elementary school, probably 3rd or 4th grade, everyone was walking out of the school at the end of the day. As I was walking out the doors, avoiding bumping into people, I saw 2 people walking towards me holding hands. For some reason, young me decided that it would be cool to crouch down and go under their arms instead of walking around them. I was not a clever boy. Unfortunately, because they were around my age and height, I didn't realize how low I would have to crouch. I tripped while readjusting my height, causing face-to-crotch contact for a solid 3 seconds while I recovered. The dude said something to me which I don't remember anymore, but I do remember him smiling at me strangely as I ran away. Story 32. When I was fairly new to drinking, I was walking home with a friend who recognized a pretty girl in the street. Drunk, I joined in their conversation and we had some laughs. Though looking back, I realized they were probably mostly at my drunken expense. My friend started to walk away, but I was still flirting with the girl. I wanted to kiss her, but I figured I had literally met her 3 minutes ago, so I decided to hug her. As I do that, she goes, "Oh, we're hugging now?" Realizing that the hug was kind of a weird move, I drunkenly decided that I would step it up by lifting her up in the air. She freaks the heck out, screaming, "Put me down! Put me down!" and starts crying. So then I just said bye, joined my friend, and left her crying in the street. Bonus, she turned out to be friends with many of my friends. I still see her around, and it's still awkward every time. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a story that you'd like to share, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to make a video on them in the future. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Thanks again, and see you next time.